attention to the gospel reading today, John chapter 10, the Good Shepherd chapter of the Bible. So there's a kind of famous book in the marketing world called StoryBrand. And the idea behind the book and the marketing strategy that it presents is that each person, each of us, sees ourselves as living out our own story. We got a beginning, we got a middle, we got an end. We're kind of the main character, of course, and there are other supporting characters. And StoryBrand, the marketing strategy, keys into the idea that in every good story, whether it's a novel or a true story, in every good story, the main character at some point realizes that their life isn't all it could be, and they want to make it all they could be, and so they set out on this journey, however that journey looks in the particular story. And oftentimes, in novels and in real life too, in true stories, a guide will enter in to the storyline. And the guide kind of helps the person see what they're missing and see how to go after it and go get it. And eventually they make it to where the grass is greener. They make it to where the good life is. And so the point of StoryBrands is to say that companies shouldn't pretend to be the main character in their story as they try and sell products. They should position themselves and make all their messaging reflect that they want to be the guide, that they want to keep you, the customer, as the main character, and that their product or their service or their program or whatever it is, that's the perfect guide to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And once I heard about this marketing strategy, of course, I started to see it all over the place in all kinds of different advertisements. I think maybe the most common missing piece that companies are trying to show that they are a guide to help you find is connection. People want connection with other human beings. They want good friends. They want a solid friend group that understands them, that knows them, that they can have fun with. And so companies want to position their product as the guide that can get you a group of friends who is just like that. Yoga studios, coffee shops, chambers of commerce, cell phone companies even, all kinds of different companies have these advertisements that show their product bringing you, the potential customer, all kinds of joy and all kinds of laughing pictures of friends having fun. And if you're a real student of the Crossroads Bulletin, maybe you know that on the back we have our mission statement. And our mission statement says our mission is to connect you, first of all to Jesus, but second of all to other Chicagoans. We as a church at Crossroads are positioning ourselves as a guide. We're saying you can come to this church and you can find connections. We can show you the community that you've been looking for. And this is interesting. Is Crossroads just another company? Is our mission statement just another marketing ploy like all those ones that use StoryBrands? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I hope by the end of today you'll see why I can say absolutely not. Because the things that this world promises us and the things that Jesus promises us often sound very similar. They're often almost indistinguishable, his voice from the voice of the world. I think that maybe because things like StoryBrands, whether it's intentional or not, they're based on a biblical truth. The biblical truth that our life, we know it isn't quite as it should be. We want to get it to somewhere else. We want to seek this good life, and we know we can't really get there on our own. So if Jesus' voice sounds so very similar to all these other different voices in the world, if they're all kind of offering the same thing, if they're all offering to take us to the good life, how do we know which to choose? How do we know which to follow? How can we distinguish from which voice is which? In John chapter 10, Jesus talks about two kinds of voices. He talks about the voice of the shepherds who go in through the gate to the sheep pen, and these are the ones who are looking for what's best for the sheep. They have the sheep's best interest in mind. Jesus also talks about the thieves and robbers on the other hand. these people who jump over and try to influence the sheep for their own gain. How do we know which voice is which if they sound so similar? Jesus gives us a foolproof test in these verses, a foolproof test that shows us that his voice is the only voice that can actually guide us to where the grass really is greener. And we can tell his voice because his voice promises not only to be our guide, he promises to be our guide, but not just that, he also promises to be our gate. In these verses, Jesus is speaking primarily to the Pharisees. The Pharisees were a group of religious leaders who had kind of set themselves up in society as the voice of truth when it came to divine things. If you wanted to get closer to God, if you wanted God to bless you more, you would go and talk to these Pharisees. They had set themselves up as the guide. And they would give you these guidelines of things you can do. Things you can do to make sure that you could be in God's good graces. And as long as you complete this checklist, this list of things to do, then they promised, well, you'll be where you want to be. You'll find your good life. There's another little comparison here that Jesus plays on. He's speaking to the Pharisees near the temple. And the temple courtyard where people would gather to worship was often known as the sheep pen. The Pharisees would say, if you want to go into the sheep pen, well, then you have to do this list to make sure you'll be on God's good side before you get in there. Jesus takes that sheep in an imagery and he commandeers it. He wants to use it against the Pharisees to point out where they're wrong. He talks about the sheep pen in literal terms, a picture that people would have been very familiar with back then, of course. All across the rolling hills in the surrounding countryside, there were all these sheep pens, the four walls. They were often built out of brick, and then there was the one gate at the front. Sometimes it was an actual gate, other times it was just a gap in the wall. And Jesus paints the Pharisees as the people who are trying to get over the fence, jump over the fence, avoid the gatekeeper to get at the sheep for their own gain. He paints people who would come and show interest in what's best for the sheep as shepherds. And he paints us as sheep. He paints the sheep as people who always follow their Savior's voice, who are so attuned to what Jesus says and what he wants us, how he wants us to live, how he wants us to be, that they never stray away. They never get distracted by other voices. They always are ready to follow their shepherd in and out of the sheep pen. And maybe we think, uh-oh, because we think about the past few years of our life. We think about the past few months. We think about the past few hours this morning. And we think of examples where we have not followed our Savior's voice, where we have let ourselves be distracted, be pulled away by these other voices in the world that sound so similar and offer similar things. What kind of voices have you allowed to influence you? Is it the voice of an advertisement on social media that is perfectly targeted for your preferences and your passions? Is it the voices of experts in some field, whether it's people who write the big long papers or the talking heads on TV or the podcast guests that you listen to? Do you listen to your friends, or maybe one friend who is always trying to tell you, if you would just do this, then your life would be so much better? Is it the voice of your parents? Maybe not even spoken out loud, but subtly communicated, that if you do such and such, then I'll be proud of you. There are all kinds of different voices that are clambering over that wall, trying to get your attention, trying to get you to follow them. There are so many more opportunities to listen, to buy in, to think, this product, this service, this lifestyle is what I need. This is going to take me over the hill to where the grass is greener. And we've strayed. We've strayed from the voice of our good shepherd. And we continue to stray. We continue to struggle back and forth between all these voices. Why do we do this? Because these voices sound so similar to Jesus. Jesus offers us salvation. They offer us a kind of salvation that we can fully realize just a little bit sooner. Jesus' voice offers total commitment in our life to Him. These other voices offer improvement in our life, but not quite with a total commitment. It's a little bit more attainable. The Pharisees took people and they showed them this long list of things that they could do to get into God's good graces. And that list would either direct the Pharisees in one of two, or direct the people in one of two directions. Either they would look at that list and they would say, well, look at that. I've kept just about everyone on here pretty well. Look at how good I am compared to how bad everyone else is. Or it would direct them to the side of despair. They would look at the list and they would see, oh my goodness, I've barely kept any of these. Everyone else is better with me. Why would God appreciate me? Why can I enter into the sheep pen when I have failed God so completely? Voices that direct us to ourselves, whether it's to pride or to despair, direct us away from the voice of Jesus. How can we tell the difference? How can we know whether a voice is a shepherd that wants to enter right through the gate the right way and call us out to Him, or a voice that's clambering over the side, trying to get us to focus on ourselves instead of on our good shepherd, Jesus? How can we know whether an advertisement that comes across our phone is something that will bring us closer to God, is a valid way of serving Him, or something that will pull us away from Him? How can we know where the line is between putting faith in a certain expert in a field and just considering what they have to say? How can we know whether the advice friends or family bring us is going to make us walk further down our Savior's path or lead us astray? Well, here's a good place to start. He calls His own sheep by name and leads them out. Jesus knows you better than any social media advertisement algorithm. He knows you certainly better than any expert in a field. He knows you better than your friends. He even knows you better than your family. He knows you so well, which is also a little bit scary, because He knows the bad parts of your life too. He knows the times that you have strayed. He knows that you are like a sheep, that you will readily follow pretty much just about anyone who calls out to you if you see that the grass is greener over there. Jesus knows that you on your own are incapable of bringing eternal welfare to yourself. You are helpless. I am helpless. We're all sheep. That's why it's so comforting that Jesus knows us by name. He knows us so well that He knows we are incapable of leading ourselves to clear waters and still pastures, and so He does it for us. He is the guide that brings us there, but He's not only the guide, He also is the gate. In the second part of our reading, Jesus changes His metaphor just a little bit. He starts to picture Himself into this story, paint Himself into this story as the shepherd. And this would have been a very familiar picture too. In those sheep pens that just had the opening for the gate, the shepherd would often lie down in that opening at night, so that if any predator wanted to get at the sheep, they would theoretically have to go over the shepherd. The shepherd was the one who was the way in and the way out of the sheep pen. Jesus has made Himself the way in, the way out, the way to live in God's favor. He has done this because He has given up His life for you. And so He points you not to yourself for your salvation, but to Him. Other voices that come into your life would have you believe that you really are still the main character of your story. They're just the guide, but you just need one more piece, and then your own skills and abilities and ambitions and personality can really get you over the hill to where the grass is greener. Jesus says no. You can't do it on your own. But have no fear, because Jesus has done it completely for you. He has not given you this deal where he says, you do 99% and I'll do the last 1%. Or he hasn't given you a deal where he does the 99% and you do 1%. No, he says 0% is up to you. Jesus' voice calls you, not with a call to strive, to be better and better, to keep working on yourself, to keep continuing to strive along that path. He calls to you with a call of certainty. A call that says, it is already finished. It is complete. His work for you is done. It is a historical fact. He died and rose again for you, so that you could, as Jesus says, go in and out of the sheep pen and find pasture. You can live your life waking or sleeping, hearing his voice. You can discern his voice, because Jesus' voice is the only voice that tells you that he has done it completely already. His is not a voice of striving, it is a voice of certainty. And when you know that voice that takes all of the pressure away from you, you have no need to follow any other voice anymore. You can go in and out through the gate, through Jesus. You can live your life discerning between all the different advice that you might get from friends or family members or social media or experts. You can discern what leads you along Jesus' path and what would lead you away by this litmus test. Does it give maximum glory to Jesus, 100%, or does it save a little bit for myself? That's how you know Jesus' voice. And because Jesus has this voice of certainty, this voice that he knows you and he has completely laid down his life for you, the community that Jesus creates, the connections that Jesus creates are different than connections you can find anywhere else in the world. Relationships are often built on a set of expectations. If you fulfill these certain things, then you can remain my friend. If you don't, then, well, I'll go find other friends who will, etc., etc. Your value in those relationships is determined by how well you fulfill that set of expectations. But in your relationship with God, because of your good shepherd who has done it all for you, and because he calls you and invites you to come into the sheep pen through his work, your value is not based on the things that you have done, the things you haven't done, the times you've been prideful, the times you've been despairing. It doesn't affect your relationship with God. Instead, your value is based on what Jesus has done for you. And so, in this community, in these connections that Jesus creates, we treat one another the same way. It doesn't matter your past, the times you've gone astray. It doesn't matter where you were born or what your family upbringing has been like. Jesus' church is a place where all people are loved unconditionally because Jesus has first loved us unconditionally. That's what Jesus means when he says that we will have life and have it to the full. He doesn't just guide us to the life that we might think we need. He has given us the life that he knows we need. And we can trust him because he has already proven that he is one of those shepherds that goes in and out through his own gate because he has the right intent with us. We know that his intent is to comfort and to care for us because he has already proven it by giving up his life for us. Jesus' voice brings you to grasses that are actually greener because he is not only your guide, but also your gate.